people talk about, you being aggressive and, all that stuff. And I was talking to the girls, they say, wow, she's Brandy's angry drunk and she's drinking too much. So she's a cycle. That's saying a lot.
Hey guys, can I help you?
It's getting late. Let us in.
Do I know y'all? Y'all got the right house?
Listen, you really need to let us in.
Hey, you seen any kids with hoodies?
Welcome to another episode of Strange Curiosity. A lot of people associate the paranormal with ghosts and haunted locations, and that's not necessarily the case. In fact, in tonight's episode, we explore something that's a little bit different.
There's a growing phenomenon in the paranormal. It's called the black-eyed kids. Everyday people like you and me are being approached by these beings. But what are they?
Some people think they're aliens. Others think they're demons. Whatever the case, we're going to attempt to find out tonight. We're going to start halfway around the world, down under, in Sydney, Australia.
My name is Attila Caldi. I'm a paranormal investigator from Sydney, Australia. About 10 years ago, I had an experience I haven't really spoken of much up until now. It's been 10 years, so I thought, what the hell, might as well talk about it. I was driving home from an appointment, and this is late in the afternoon, and I had this vehicle in front of me, and there was a lady that was driving it, and I recall being quite anxious and quite, I guess, impatient because she was driving very slowly. So when we stopped at the set of lights, I was starting to think, can you please hurry up, pull your finger out and make a move. And just as I was thinking this, she looked into her rearview mirror and her eyes were unbelievable. They were jet black. There were no white in her eyes, just pure black. And it was as if she was looking right through me, as if she knew what I was talking about. So this prompted an interest at that time for me to look into more of similar cases. And I actually bumped into two cases, funny enough. And this particular person that I had the experience with, she was an adult. But the cases that I looked into happened here in Sydney, in the Northern Beaches. And they were to do with black-eyed children. There was one of the interesting cases was about this fellow who was driving home from work, and he stops at a set of lights, and this young kid approaches him from the side and taps on the window. He had a hood on, and apparently there were some other kids behind him as well in the background. And they were just standing there, and this kid was knocking on his window, so he thought, oh, well, something's going on, so he wound his window down. And lo and behold, when he looked at the kid, he saw that he was extremely pale and had no features in his eyes. They were just black, completely black. And this kid was asking him for a lift.
Hey, mister,
And
can we get a lift?
the guy completely freaked out, wound his window up and took off. Another incident that occurred around the same region in Sydney's northern beaches. Again, there was a gentleman involved, and he was watching television late one night and heard a knocking on the door. So he gets up, walks to the door, opens it, and sees a bunch of young kids standing in his front yard. One kid in particular, this young male, similar description to what the previous witness encountered. He was standing there asking him to let him in because he wanted to come in and make a phone call. That's when he saw the kid in detail. His hood was down, but he was extremely pale, unusually pale, and had jet black eyes. The guy, I don't know what he did, but according to the report, he closed the door quickly and refused to let the child in with his friends. So the kid persisted, he kept on knocking on the door, let me in, let me in. And he would turn the lights off, go over to his window and watch the kids, and they would stand there in silence, staring at the property. The guy was completely creeped out. This went on for a little while until the main kid who was knocking on the door, who seemed like the leader of the pack, got up and walked away. And the rest of the group followed him out. These were some interesting cases, and there have been some other cases around the Sydney metro area, but also around Australia, that have been people who have reported seeing these black-eyed children.
The stories that Attila told us were great, and it confirmed that these sightings have been happening all over the world. But we want to find someone with first-hand experience. Turns out, we didn't even have to leave the country to do this. In fact, we didn't even have to leave the state of Texas.
This was back in the day of dial-up internet, and I had to pay my bill. I was going to pay my dial-up bill, and they had a drop slot that I was going to just put my check in and go about my business. Right next door is an old movie theater. I had my pen and my check, and I was just going to get out of the car, drop it off, and go about my business. And that's when I hear a very sort of sharp knock at on the window of my car. And I look over and I see two young boys around the ages of 9 and 12. One of them has sort of tan complected skin, olive colored skin, curly hair. The other one has red hair, sort of pale with freckles. I mean, typical looking kids. Both of them wearing pullover hoodies. And my first thought is that these kids are going to hit me up for money, because that's just sort of what seemed logical at the time. So I'm a little irritated, but I crack the window and I ask them, "Can I help you?" And at this point is when it starts to get strange. The red-headed kid doesn't say anything throughout the entire exchange. He never does. Oh, it's only the curly-headed kid who does the talking. And so in my retellings of the story, I've nicknamed him the spokesman, because that kind of feels like that was his role. And he is very practiced and very smooth and not very childlike at all, actually, in his delivery, in his diction, everything. Very, very confident and even a little bit commanding in a way. He starts in and he says, "Hey, mister.
Hey, mister.
We left our money at home,
We wanna go see the movie.
and
Can you drive us there?"
So we need somebody to give us a ride to our mom's house so we can get our money to go see the movie. That sounds kind of logical, I guess. I mean, kids and whatnot. But immediately when he speaks to me, I am gripped by an inexplicable, terrible fear that just flows through me. And I am absolutely terrified of these two children. And yet I have this absolute desire to flee almost immediately from them. So anyway, the spokesman starts going on with his patter. He says,
Mister,
"Now look, mister, it's not that far away. We won't take up much of your time. Just go to our mom's house. We'll get our money. We'll come back here. Everything will be fine." He was doing everything that he could to try to get me to comply. I don't know if it was breaking their gaze. I don't know if it was just my brain finally realized what was disturbing me so much with them. But I look over, and these kids have all black eyes. Just these soulless, dark voids. I mean, you can see some reflection there. So I mean, it's not like they were eyeless, but their eyes are just completely black. And I am just in a moment of absolute, complete, and utter terror at that point. I feel like almost that I have been hunted in a way. I mean, that's the only way I can describe this, that these are predatory creatures that want to do me some sort of harm. I'm not sure what, but I know for a fact that is the case. I hadn't cracked the window very much, so it doesn't take much to roll it up. But at that point, the spokesman becomes just absolutely furious. And he starts to bang on the window hard. I mean, and he's just angry, absolutely, horrifically angry. I can see this. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it doesn't take much to take me back there. And he says, "Mister, we can't come inside your car unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in." And at that point, I just throw it into reverse, tear out of the parking lot. If there had been any other cars near me, I probably would have sideswiped them or whatever. But I'm not thinking about driving. I'm thinking about escaping at that point. I look in my rearview mirror, and the way the parking lot is designed, there's no way that they could have run without me at least getting some sort of glimpse of them. I look in the rearview mirror, and they're gone. I drive home in an absolute panic, literally run from my car to my door, lock the door, collapse on the floor for a little while. I call a friend from college who I trust. I tell him what happened, and at the time he was dating this girl who was allegedly psychic. He put me on speakerphone so that she and another friend who were there could hear. And I was telling the story, and I didn't even get to the point where I talk about the eyes. The girl interrupts me and she says, "Do these kids have all black eyes?" And I say, well, yeah, well, how did you know that? And she says, "I had a dream about kids like that the other night. And I promise you, if you had let them into your car, you would be dead right now."
Brian Bethel's story was amazing. The way he described the black eyes reminded me of the old Alien movies that everyone's always seen. So I wanted to go contact someone who knew a little bit more about aliens than I did, and that was MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. They are the nation's leading UFO research organization, and they may know something about the black-eyed kids, and if not, they at least know about aliens on this planet.
My name is Fletcher Gray, and I'm the Deputy Director of the STAR Team program with MUFON. MUFON's been in existence since 1969, and we do investigations where the U.S. Air Force had stopped doing their investigation when Blue Book ceased to exist.
Project Blue Book was a joint initiative between the U.S. Air Force and private civilian research organizations. Their main goal? To officially document the growing influx of UFO reports in this country on the heels of the Roswell, New Mexico incident in 1947. Many think Blue Book was just a cover-up to calm mass paranoia, and the U.S. government knew all too well that aliens walked among us.
I do believe that the federal government knows that they're there. They know they exist, very much so. There has been some talk about what they call the Men in Black organization within the federal government. From my research and what I've been reading is I believe that they also have what they call retrieval teams. In other words, in case of a UFO goes down, they have specialized units that actually fly out to the location and retrieve any downed craft or alien on spot.
So do the black-eyed kids actually exist, and has MUFON ever heard of them? And if so, what do they want?
There's people said that they actually seen these black-eyed children. As far as I know, there's no documentation and no research that they actually exist. If they are, they're pretty well keeping themselves to themselves. My thinking on it is, if they do exist, they're probably going to be a hybrid of some type. There's a lot of people in the scientific world think about the same line of thinking, is that these aliens are actually clones. And when you clone so many times, you keep cloning over and over and over again, you lose the DNA actually breaks down. So what they're doing is they're actually stealing our DNA and creating their own hybrid race, because if they're going to survive, they got to have better DNA than what they have now.
It was a plausible theory, but one thing didn't sit right with us. If these beings were aliens and they wanted our DNA, why didn't they just take it? So now we want to get with someone on the religious side of the house to talk about the possibility of demons.
I believe that the demons are real and that they exist. According to the Bible in the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 10 through 18, the Apostle Paul talks about that we do not fight against flesh and blood, but against the principalities of this earth. It's a spiritual warfare. The book of Genesis, chapter 3, Satan himself took the form of a serpent. Other demons will take different forms, from full possession to, animals, to all kinds of different things. They're spirits, so they can take any form they choose to. Their purpose is to torment mankind, to torment God's creation, to distract, to mislead God's people, God's children, while here on earth. The other aspect, as far as taking the form of children with darkened eyes, demons can possess, like I mentioned earlier, possess people, changing them, distorting them physically, not changing their complete appearance to where they're not human-like, but changing their appearances and the way from not eating to torturing themselves. The Word of God says when Jesus Christ came upon the demon-possessed man in the tombs, that he was convulsing and conjolting and screaming and was tortured. Once he rebuked the demon out of him, he actually was healed and was able to stand up straight and was clothed. So we see that the demons can do that, put down on that appearance, I guess you could say. So their whole agenda is just to disrupt and destroy anything that God has placed, ordained, or has anointed.
This explanation seemed to fit Brian Bethel's story a lot better, but I was left with some questions. Were these demons that were possessing children, or were the demons actually manifesting themselves as children? How was I supposed to investigate something like this? I mean, I still have the notion that these could be aliens, but the demon explanation seemed more plausible. And then it dawned on me, why not use a psychic? Let's test them out. Show them some pictures that they know nothing about and see if they can tell what's going on. Luckily, I found someone in Dallas who was willing to do it.
Well, my initial impressions is something I've made notes on, as well as what I'm seeing. I'm seeing three beings around either this person or in this area. To me, they don't seem human. I'm not sure what they are. That's the initial thing I get. They look like demons surrounding that person. And also there was something involving a car, possibly a fight. Depending on what it is, it can change form and present itself as something different. To get to someone, they will mask themselves as children, or someone innocent. Like an experience I had was, it was someone that looked like a preacher, and it changed into a demon. Either active or dormant, they've been around him for a while.
Now, what he told me about these beings following Brian Bethel since childhood reminded me of something that happened during the interview with Brian Bethel that I thought was irrelevant up until now.
Well, my granddad always, instead of going up to turn off the set at night, would just unplug it. So I knew that the set was unplugged. And one night, I remember the set coming on by itself, and these really strange looking things up on the screen that were trying to get me to come up there and interact with them. They looked kind of like Muppets. I know this sounds strange, but that's what they looked like, which to me would be appealing to a kid in theory if they actually looked more like Muppets. And I know this sounds crazy, but it was like they were speaking to each other in a really guttural language, and they wanted me to approach the screen, and I wouldn't. I got scared, tried to wake up my grandparents. Neither one would wake up. Ran into the front room, got into my granddad's big, easy chair, thought I was safe, looked over at the big color TV that they had in the living room, and I saw a little pinpoint light start to come on as if the TV was coming on itself. At that point, I screamed, and my mother, who was actually sleeping in another room at the time, ran in there, and I swear the moment she hit the room, I saw the thing wink off.
What the psychic said next was quite disturbing. In fact, I considered not even putting it on this episode, but I figured this was important to people who may have encounters in the future with black-eyed kids. This is something that you might want to consider.
I think they want his life, what they want. I mean, that's the only thing I pick up. They either want to torment him, or they want him to get to the point where he might end his own life.
Brian Bethel seemed to have dodged a bullet. He's lived a happy life, and in fact, he's mentioned that these black-eyed kids have not bothered him since that incident. But what about people who let the children in? Whatever happened to them? We may have come across an actual story that can explain this scenario. On a desolate road in rural North Dakota, a woman is having car trouble and is stalled on the side of the road. She calls her husband while she's looking at the engine, and she's suddenly startled by two little girls standing in the middle of the road.
Can we get a ride home?
She told her husband on the phone that these girls appeared out of nowhere and that they needed a ride. But when he showed up, everyone, including his wife, were missing.
There are dozens and dozens and dozens of people who go missing every year without much of an explanation. And I think that at least some of these disappearances might be explained through phenomena like this.
We hear about missing persons all the time. We do not know. I believe, like I mentioned earlier, we're in spiritual warfare. We do not know what's going on in that missing person's mind or that missing person, why they're missing at that point in time. So could it have been an influence of a demon? Could it have been an influence of a spiritual host? I definitely believe so. I can definitely believe that they were influenced or misled or taken away.
So this stuff is out there. I mean, whatever this phenomenon is, whatever they are, whatever they want, they are out there, and I'm not the only one who's seen them, and I certainly didn't have any interest in creating them.
So what would you do if you were approached by a black-eyed kid? Would you take the investigative approach?
If I had some black-eyed kids knock on my door, I'd open it up and invite them in. You know, see what the problem is. You know, if they're lost, need help, you know, I would treat them like I would anybody else until I got to talking to them and, you know, and establish, you know, who and what they are.
The religious approach?
Well, the Bible teaches us if we're approached by Satan and his demons or we're being tempted, the Bible teaches us that we must, resist the devil and he'll flee from us.
Or the approach by someone who's actually had the experience?
Just be wary. And my advice would be to, whatever you do, don't let them in.